Okay, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Mission Matters Money Podcast, your source for all things money. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres. Keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today I have Gregory Shepard on the line, and he's founder and CEO over at Boss Capital Partners. Greg, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I'm excited to get into today's topic, not because it's the best of times, but I know that you're the person that I want on the line to talk about this. So Boss Crisis Management, the four-step process for navigating the COVID-19 pandemic. So excited to get into what you prepared for us today. But before we do that, I do want to get a little bit further into what you're doing over at Boss Capital Partners. Tell us a little bit more about the company, please.
Sure. So I actually started BCP, Boss Capital Partners, out of a necessity. My core goal is actually to help more entrepreneurs succeed. So I started BOSS, which stands for the Business Operating Support System, years ago, which is what I've used for the 12 companies that I started and exited, as well as all the investments I've done. And so as a result of using BOSS to try to help more entrepreneurs succeed, I found that, we needed to have a funding source for a lot of these folks. And I had a lot of investors coming to me and saying, hey, listen, if you have entrepreneurs using the BOSS system, we're interested in investing. And then I started BOSS Capital. So BOSS Capital works on Series Seed. Investments are typically between $250,000 up to $5 million. Myself and my partners are investors. There's 27 angel investors. We're not a fund. We're a syndicate. And we work specifically in subscription revenue SaaS businesses.
What are some of the, so you mentioned subscription revenue SaaS businesses. What are some of the niches you like within SaaS? I mean, is there a specific one that you veer towards versus others, or is it pretty much anything SaaS related, reoccurring revenue?
It's pretty much anything SaaS related. Well, I should say it was until this COVID thing came out. Now we're looking for, you look at businesses, there are businesses that develop things that save money, and those businesses are a problem type business. They solve a problem. And then there's businesses that take advantage of an opportunity, and those businesses are make money type businesses. We've shifted our focus over to businesses that are solving problems and therefore saving consumers or other businesses money. And that's the focus now. So any SaaS software that's actually solving a problem and saving money for its customer.
That's awesome. So that's helpful. So I think that's also a great transition. So let's get into Boss Crisis Management. So you have a four-step process. Where do you want to start with that one?
Well, let me explain what Boss is. So I spent 20 years building companies and trying out everything from Six Sigma, the 4DX, the Lean, Agile, Kanban, everything. And I interviewed the Navy SEALs, and I interviewed the Marine Corps, the first fighting wing of the Air Force, manufacturing, congressional candidates have used BOSS. And I put together this process based on everything I found. And BOSS has 5 steps to it. And people can learn about that by going to the website. What BOSS has is it's a system for when things are normalized. And right now things aren't normalized. So what we did is we went back and created a way that businesses can get normalized inside of the BOSS framework. So the first step of that is the call to action, right? So the crisis journey starts out with the call to action. The call to action in this situation is the crisis, right? Is the COVID-19 crisis. The second step is meeting a mentor, right? This is where you are right now and your listeners, where you're meeting somebody who's going to provide you some advice who's already been there. And I built businesses during the 2008 recession, the dot bomb, the 9/11 crisis. I've been through this 3 times. So, you have somebody talking to you that has the experience. I've won 4 private equity awards. I have a book coming out published by Forbes. I write for Entrepreneur, Forbes, Bloomberg, Fortune, everybody. So, you have some, somebody who has been endorsed by these things helping you out. The third step is crossing the threshold. So this is acting on the mentor's advice. And then the fourth step is the reward. So this is emerging from the crisis as a better company. And then the return is the fifth step. And this is where you get this back to business as normal, where your business is normalized. So when you think about that, you think about the phases of crisis management when it comes to your operations. So the initial assessment and damage control is what are the immediate potential long-term impacts of this crisis on your business and the market? And what can you do to limit or slow the damage? And what do you need from your team and your stakeholders to consult you with? That's the first step. The second step is then to go into stabilization and cross the crisis pivot. Now, in this step, you figure out first, how can you extend the runway that you have? So a lot of businesses are running out of cash, including those in my portfolio. So I said, okay, let's talk about how we can extend the runway. Sometimes this has to do with laying people off. Sometimes it has to do with raising capital. Sometimes it has to do with closing deals in the pipeline. There's a lot of things that you can do to sort of extend your runway out. And then what you have to do is you have to say, is your business still viable in the crisis and after the crisis? If it isn't, then you got to go back and look at your business and talk about, customer stories and user stories and things like that. Look at your segmentation, your ideal customer profile, and rebuild it so that it is viable during and after the crisis. Then the next thing you do is how do you use the existing assets and talents that you have differently to generate revenue during the crisis and enter new markets. So you see a lot of the entrepreneurs in the restaurant space doing a ton of really, really cool things to try to make sure that they can stay alive during this day. I mean, in San Diego here, the food, the open, what do they call them? The places that supply the restaurants with food have opened their doors up to the general public, so that we can buy their food at the prices that the restaurants buy, because the restaurants aren't buying their food and they need to get rid of their inventory because it goes bad. And it keeps them staying alive. So this is the kind of thing, right? You think about how you can change your business around to adapt to this current environment. And then how can you adapt to any new technology or develop new technology? Then you get into the third phase of crisis management in operations, which is seizing the opportunity now that you've identified it. So what aspects of your business, sector, or market are likely to see permanent change? And how do you become a market leader in that new world? Now, every problem comes with an opportunity. Literally, every problem comes with an opportunity. Those that succeed are the people that not only see it, have the ability to see it, but those that have the ability to act on it. So what are the new pain points that this crisis created for customers that you can solve? And then the fourth step is return to deliberate operations, right, when you're back to normalization. So what conditions must be met in order for you to exit the crisis operations process? You have to say, this is what I need to do to get back to normalization. And how will you assess the new normal? So the thing is that you have to realize is that there is a new normal. And this process of these four steps in these phases in crisis management get you to that new normal. Once you get that new normal, then you have what you call pre-crisis management. So pre-crisis, your circle of concern, these are factors that you have no control over, big circle. Smaller circle inside of that, the circle of influence, the factors you can control. And before the crisis, the circle of influence is pretty big. The circle of concern is always bigger. But after the crisis or during the crisis, the circle of concern, factors we don't have any control over, are huge. And the circle of influence, the factors we can control, are now very small. What that means is that you have to make a circle of influence checklist. And this is a checklist of things that you can control and a checklist of things that you cannot control. I actually have a page set up and a webcast that people can get into to see the templates of this and actually walk through this. It's just GregoryShepard.com/COVID-19. And so those of you that are listening that are like, I can't visualize this, go there and you can see it for yourself. And this should really help. My concept here is to help. I don't have any other objectives except for to try to help entrepreneurs get through this. So when you think about the boss initiative development process, so this is the after you get through the circle of concern, the circle of influence, so now you're into normalized business and you're now developing your lists, there's a step-to-step process. So you isolate the initiative. That's what we just did. The next step that you do is you complete a SWOT analysis. So those of you that don't know what that is, there's 4 squares: strengths, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities. And you make a list of 1 to 5 of each one of these things. So your strengths, and then contrary to that, your weaknesses, your threats, and then contrary to that, your opportunities. This helps you develop the missions and objectives that you have and you have to accomplish, and helps you see through those things. So basically, the SWOT gives you what's your tailwinds and what's your headwinds, that you have the ability to do that. And then you prioritize things, and now you have this big list of stuff you have to do, and they all aren't the same priority. So you have to prioritize things using Eisenhower's urgent versus important and impact versus effort. So if you have a list of things in a spreadsheet, in the next column, say, is this urgent or is this important? And in the column next to that, impact versus effort. So you're after the highest impact at the lowest effort. You have to isolate the urgent things so that you can focus on the important things. Urgent things happen when important things are ignored, unless you're in a crisis. And then urgent things hit you all at once. So you have to get back to where you're controlling things instead of your circle of influence and your circle of concern controlling things. And then finally, I can give you a case scenario. One of the companies that I have in my portfolio, which is a high-tech SaaS company, has about $2 million in ARR and 10 employees. The product and service that they offer is automation, and their sales cycle is about 60 days. So I wrote this case study up to help people out. So the situation here is that social distancing has caused the workforce to abandon the field, and as a result, customer acquisition cost has increased, and sales have slowed to almost a halt. So how did we handle it? We leveraged the BOSS system, and we put together an initiation of the development process to mention out the problem and determine a course of action, just like I just described. And then we put things in deal triage. So we took all the sales that we had and we put it in deal triage. Deal triage is just maximizing the existing opportunities so you can take the pressure off a new pipeline and get the stuff you have in the pipeline, which has the highest contributor to a low customer acquisition cost, or CAC. Then the second step is to repurpose the event budgets, and all the event budgets then were deployed into digital marketing so that we could do more demand generation because we couldn't do the events anymore. And the results of this were the customer acquisition costs were reduced by 20% by redeploying the budget into a digital pipeline and rebuilding our tactics. And deal triage resulted in 4 net new deals, which originally were projected to close in future months. So this strategy should definitely help people. I mean, we're doing this with all of our portfolio businesses and even our own business itself. Like I said earlier, we've changed the type of businesses that we've looked at to adjust to this. So I put this together to really help. And again, I really hope that people go to the website because everything's in there. You can see step-by-step screenshots, and there's templates and everything there. It's just Gregory Shepard /COVID-19. So I know that's like drinking out of a fire hose. We don't have a lot of time to go over it, but I hope it's helpful. What questions do you have?
So, Greg, that definitely great, and I love I was intentionally kind of quiet here because I know I wanted to get as much of your system out there as possible because I know your intention here is to help people and to help them do it. But I suggest, obviously, to get more into the meat of it, for them to head on over to the website that you set up for this to help people with that. And I want you to leave 2 things as a final. Number one, if somebody wants more information again on the webinar, I believe you set up for them, how do they get that? And number 2, if somebody wants to learn more about Boss Capital Partners, how do they do that?
So for Boss Capital Partners, the website is Boss Capital Partners, but you're better off going to my website, GregoryShepard.com. So that's just GregoryShepard.com. There's I mean, there is just a ton of stuff there that I am trying to give away. I've made my money, right? So I'm giving back. That's what I'm trying to do here. The book and everything that I'm doing is just to give back. So I put everything there. It's free. Just, knock yourself out. The Gregory Shepard /COVID-19, there's a page there that you can learn about it. You just register, just put in your email, and then we'll send you templates and we'll send you the next webcast that comes out. The first of the series has been released in conjunction with the universities in Southern California and the Economic Development Department. And the next one's going to be coming out, I think, here in about a week and a half. And if you register there, you'll be alerted when the next one comes out. And so it's a series of different things that help you through this process.
That's awesome. Well, hey, Greg, really appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing more about your method and also your history and the case study. I mean, I hope that's all helpful, and I hope that to the listeners, I hope this helps you. And don't forget, get on those webcasts. I mean, Greg he's teeing it up for you to be able to kind of help and navigate this change that we're all going through in all our businesses. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave me a review, and if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, Mission Matters Money, definitely give us a subscribe there, but also leave some comments on the video. I mean, love to know what you thought and what kind of things you're doing and what kind of businesses you have going on. And Greg, thanks again for coming on the show.